Nora Speaks is a weekly podcast that tugs at the soul and consciousness of the Black community. With show topics such as youth empowerment, education, women's impact, and civic engagement, Nora Speaks challenges the listener to not only join the movement, but be the movement. On the show, you'll learn from insightful guests who have demonstrated capacity in these fields and more, and I'm your host, Nora Muhammad. Welcome to the show. Welcome to another episode of the Nora Speaks podcast, and I'm your host, Nora Muhammad. I'm excited to be with you back here for another episode and conversation on the podcast. If you have not already done so, I encourage you to subscribe to Nora Speaks where you're listening to this. Any app that you use to listen to podcasts, you will find Nora Speaks. So please do subscribe. Feel free to leave a review, leave a rating, especially if you listen on Apple Podcasts. And of course, please share the show with your family, your friends, those that you value. That's if this show has value to you and if you find something meaningful here, and I hope that you do. In this episode, I want to talk about the flood. And I'm not talking about Noah's flood. I'm talking about the flood of propaganda that we are now seeing and what we will see as we move forward in this political season, this campaign season, specifically the campaign season for the future president. And so when we saw that our president, Joe Biden, left the race and put his support behind Kamala Harris, immediately we began to witness the shifting from political attacks from Joe Biden to Kamala Harris. And with those political attacks, not just necessarily on what she has done, but also some make-believe stuff that's false, that is fictional, in an effort to persuade voters to vote one way or another. And I think what we see during this political campaign is it's really no different than what we've seen in the past. And, things with political propaganda is certainly getting more sophisticated. And as, Black people in America, we have certainly been subject to the target of propaganda. Some of us, where you're doing the work that you're doing, you may have had propaganda campaigns leveled against you. I find that when we are trying to change the norm, when we're trying to change the status quo, improve conditions in our community, the improvements must come with a pretty radical shift in our thinking and a radical shift in our behavior. And if you're the person that's leading or striving to lead in the change in the community, change is difficult. Change is uncomfortable. And we know that there are, people, corporations, organizations that benefit from the dysfunction and hardship that our people experience. So if you're the one that's leading that change, leading that shift to improve our people, you may be very, very unpopular because dysfunction in our communities is very profitable. And, instead of folks celebrating you, you may be on the other end of people, deriding you, condemning you, attacking you, slandering you. And part of that is ugly, ugly propaganda. And so this is something that's very, very common in our community. We saw it happen with Dr. King. We saw it happen with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. It happened with Marcus Garvey. It continues to happen because it works, because it's effective. Any tool that is effective is the tool that you're going to keep going back to in your toolbox. And so this has been shown to work. In thinking back to the 2016 presidential campaign, and even the 2020 campaign, the targeting the media that hits our feeds. Most of us now are consuming quite a bit of news and material on social media. And whether we know it or not, we are the commodity. We're the product that's being sold on these social media platforms. You may go and see some shoes or a dress that you like that comes in your feed, but the social media platform sold your information to that retailer so that retailer could get in front of you, could be in your feed. So we're the product that's being sold. And so because we're there and we're the product, then as voters, as consumers, for us to be persuaded one way or another, then these people have to get in front of us. They have to get our eye. They have to get our ear. And what better place to do it than right in the palm of our hands with our smartphones? And so we began to see messages in 2016 and 2020 that were just persistent, in a very specific way, speaking to us, trying to change our ideas, guiding our thinking. I mean, they were so sophisticated during these campaigns, 2016, 2020, that if you watched any documentary about Cambridge Analytica or Cambridge Analytics, I think you'll understand what I'm saying, is that there is such a sophistication that our people were literally marching, meeting for protest, gathering in towns across this nation with leadership or with organizing from Russia. And I'm not trying to be that person that's like this conspiracy theorist, but when you understand how we can be manipulated, right? And you may go to a march and say, well, who organized it? And nobody there is accepting responsibility. All someone did was posted something on a platform where they know our eyes go to. And because they know that we are like sheep and we are easily led, then many of us were out protesting, marching, bringing our signs, and being encouraged to rally. And there was no local leader on the ground because the leader of the rally was not even in this country. And this is not just something that's specifically that's happening in the United States with Black folks. This is happening all over the world, where media is being used as a tool to create behaviors, to change ideas. And unfortunately, we are very, very vulnerable to this type of targeted attack. And I say this as we are now, about to really get into this presidential campaign. There is the Democratic National Convention that will be convening. There is a vice presidential nominee for the Democrats that will be selected. And I just encourage you, however you vote, to be very thoughtful, to be very discerning, to scrutinize the message that's coming to you. For someone to be effective in getting close to us or in getting us to come back over and over to listen to what they have to say, then they're probably talking like us, right? If someone was to speak to someone or try to target someone that's, say, in the South, well, then they're going to have elements that are familiar to that person. If there's someone in the Northeast to be targeted, well, there's going to be some familiarity, some elements that's familiar to that person that's living in the Northeast. Same thing in the Southwest. Same thing, in the Northwest. There's always going to be some alleged credibility in the messenger or in the messaging that's coming to us. So we have to be very, very discerning. We have to be very thoughtful. We have to do real investigation, and we can't be intellectually lazy and take something in the feed that's coming to us because it seems like it may be right, because it sounds like it may be right, it may not be right. And so because, as I said, it's been a successful tactic using propaganda, using media to message to us. And of course, we're going to use media to share a message. I'm using media to share a message. And I hope that the message that I'm sharing is resonating with you and is making sense to you. But the message that I'm sharing, I want this to be a message of protection and caution as we are consuming, as it is very natural to do, messages and images that we are anchored and rooted in something already, so that we're not kind of floating out into the deep end, untethered, because it's really interesting. Social scientists, social psychologists, marketers, this is what they are trained to do. They're trained to change the consumer's mind. They're trained to implant a seed, and then you constantly water that seed, and a thought will grow. And without us even realizing that thought has been embedded, has been nurtured, has been cultivated, we'll think that thought originated with us. One would be really, really clever and really, really wise, and there are very clever and wise people. How else are retailers going to be successful if they don't have geniuses that work for them to convince us to take our hard-earned money and spend it on material goods that we just don't need? So this is a very practical message that I'm giving you this day on the Nora Speaks podcast, and I hope that you'll pay attention to it. And you'll go back and, maybe you'll do research now on Cambridge Analytica, and you'll see how they have swayed elections all over the world, how they use the data that is made accessible to them through these social media platforms where we're just telling everybody everything on these platforms. And they're, really able to cultivate messages that will resonate with us. So as we are in the midst of the flood of propaganda, one way or another, I encourage you to tether yourself to something so we are not out there drifting and then carrying messages that are completely false, completely made up, completely untrue, and then we're sharing this false messaging with other people, unbeknownst to them and unbeknownst to us. So really be cautious, really be thoughtful. Don't follow the hypes. Watch out for extremes one way or another. Be grounded and do your due diligence as you are, preparing to make a choice in November. Do your own due diligence and be thoughtful. Be discerning. There's messages that come across major platforms, whether that's CNN, NBC, ABC's, Fox News. Everybody has their agenda. You have to identify what your agenda is and then who is most aligned to meet the needs of your agenda. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Nora Speaks podcast. Until next time, stay in peace.
We were brought here as a piece of property. And to keep that piece of property, it is to not allow the property to know the value of the property. What I mean by that, if you had known the history of yourself, you would not have been made a slave. And you won't be a slave now if you have a knowledge of yourself. It's hard to enslave a person that have equal knowledge with you. You just can't do it. And so this knowledge of yourself is the thing that will free you from what you have been suffering from.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Nora Speaks podcast. Be on the lookout for a new episode coming at you fresh next week. And as always, if you want to learn more about me and the work that I do, visit my website, norahmuhammad.com. Or if you have a listener question, email me at info@norahspeaks.com. You can also follow the Nora Speaks podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Nora Speaks Podcast. I'll be sure to include links in the show notes. If this show has value to you, please subscribe, rate, and review, and share it with family and friends. And be sure to check out previous episodes. And remember, don't just join the movement, be the movement. Stay in peace.